As I was telling everybody, I got the opportunity to see the film this morning, and I very much enjoyed it. Singh, I know that you heard about this true story from an article. What about this story was so cinematic to you that you were like, I gotta put this on camera?
I think it's an incredible true event that happened. And I think what was interesting about it first is that, as with most true events, like in the bluster they happen, they're quickly forgotten, and
right.
Those lives just, from the public attention, they just vanish. And that parallels so much the immigrant experience that I think all of us in some way can attest to. But beyond that, the initial premise, the veneer of what this film might be, that's really interesting. But there's a much tender story beneath it of like each one of these are a fragment that I feel like create a whole. This whole is like this broken portrait, and all of them are searching for belonging in some way, and so they're so much more similar than meets the eye. And Dustin and Hip's characters, they really form the soul of the film, and around them, are all these other pieces that like all funnel towards that, whether they are successful or not. And to me, that's the most tender story, is the most human story, and my urge to tell that version and to fight to tell that version versus another version of this being made, that's what drew me to this.
I am obsessed with the close-ups in the film. You spend a lot of time focusing on different people's faces. For you, what's your thought process behind that? What do those shots mean to you?
So, I think it goes, I love to deal in themes, including all of their characters. They aren't intentionally based off their real people. Mm-hmm. I think they become vessels for a wider commentary. And in that same way, that all of them are caught in some kind of purgatory, in whether symbolic or literal. And they live in this half-life. And it extends to Long Ma, Hip's character, which in a physical way, he has this right. physical body, but his mind is so much more lucid than what his body can do. And so like this actual vessel that his mind is in is trapped, and couple that with the language barrier. And I imagine that you depreciate one sense, you will elevate another sense. And so Long Ma's power of observation manifests into these really specific close-ups, these details that he notices that others don't. And that's really where it sits.
Dustin, while your character is not considered the leader of the convicts, you're definitely the emotional heart of them, I would say. What did you draw from, essentially? What did you draw from in order to create that bond, not only with Hip, but with your fellow escapees?
Well, first of all, we have the luxury of having. I was in Budapest. I mean, he was in France, and so Singh had organized these. I think it was at least once a week.
Yeah.
Zoom session where we would spend. I think like 2 hours, and just gotten to know each other and just share personal stories or just stories in general. And so all of that time really helped the bond between the three of us. And for me, I always go back to my initial reaction when I first read the GQ article that was sent to me, which was, and I immediately connected with Tay.
Yes.
And so to answer your question, what I was drawing from, it's this vast amount of sadness and fear and hopelessness that I felt from his character after reading the GQ article, and that never went away from me. It always stayed with me until we start to get into the script, and I talked to Singh quite a lot about my own personal stories of times where I just felt this same hopelessness from being an outcast and being the desire to fit into society and the desire to be validated,
right.
As a man. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah.
But I kept going. Sometimes when I sort of, as an actor, sometimes you get into the process and it's easy to sort of forget what that original core that motivated you
Right.
in
Yeah.
the work, and you can get distracted by things. And so I always go back to that, is that very strong sense of and I think early on there was one line in the GQ article that stuck with me. And this is before we even had the script. And remember I said to you, in the GQ article and in the real life story, Tay's character, before he turned himself in, he said to Longman, he said, "I'm so tired."
Yeah.
And I just really felt, even now talking about it, I really felt the immensity of it, and it's sometimes hard to articulate, but that I think I always go back to that line. Tay for me is at some point he's carrying so much that he's exhausted from it, and in the end he broke.
Yeah. Yeah. See, your character is very young and very erratic, I guess is a really good way to say that. Yeah. How did you handle the ride of emotions? Because sometimes you're like completely calm, then other times you were going off the handle. So how, as an actor, what was your process for like handling those ups and downs?
So this role in general had a lot of vast emotions, and it was great for me to discover those emotions, because the films I was in before, it was really complex as this story that Sting wrote, and it was really challenging for me, and I was really inspired by the story, so I took it as a really great honor and very inspired to take that challenge on and to discover these emotions. So how I did it, what I usually do is I do a physical thing with acting with my castmates. Dolly is like my brotherly form, so I would essentially like be bros with him, and then Dustin would be my uncle that I'm annoyed at, and one of the representatives like, oh, he's like that guy. Okay, screw you. I'm annoyed at you, whatever. I'm gonna annoy him. Because I'm having my previous Asian trauma or whatever for the character. So essentially with that physical, it helps me, bring that to life as far as that. But yeah, it was an immense, it was a lot. But I was really happy to have done a great job, because if I'd done not a good job, Sting would have told me to keep going. Yeah. Yeah, and I was happy. I was happy about it. I'm like, yeah, you want that? I got you. Don't worry. It's not perfect. We'll get it perfect. So I was really proud of that moment of discovery.
Talk to me about shooting my favorite scene, which is what I call the sunflower basketball scene in the hotel room. I don't know if that's what you call it, but that's what I call it. Talk to me about that.
That's very close.
You like that scene?
I love that scene, yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It's a good scene.
It's the sunflower seeds, so you're very close. The sunflower seed game.
Oh, did I not? What did I? Okay.
No, you called it something really close, and I was like, really happy.
Okay.
It's an interesting scene because it's not that I wasn't sure how the scene was gonna go when we were shooting it. When I was reading the script, I mean, intellectually I get the scene,
right?
But it's a very complex scene, because you get a transition into that where they start this thing out of boredom, and then somehow it's got to organically bond them, and then it falls apart again. But it was like, but I had no idea. I didn't get that scene actually when we were, and I just had to trust, where he was taking us. But as we started doing it, all of a sudden it just becomes this really fun, silly thing, And that day, I remember after we did the scene, I felt like good. Not like, oh man, we did a great job, but I just felt like, wow, that was like, it was a fun quality that we don't have in this film.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it just somehow, the three of us, it just kind of sparked. I don't even know how it happened, but it just. Yeah, so I'm really curious to see it, and I'm glad that
it comes off really well, and I couldn't tell that you didn't know what you were doing. Yeah. So.
I have no idea. Most of the time, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Do any of it?
That's why you need a director.
Exactly.
Your character is so interesting because your character really does exist in Long's mind. So my question for you is, how do you balance, because she's a real life person, how do you balance that with sort of Long's perceptions of her?
I think I in those dream sequence, I
Yeah.
try to talk to him like a friend.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's the best. In real life, right? It may be like we have some discrepancy, and we cannot get on anymore. But then in his dream, right? So we talk to each other, but it's more like a friend. So
Right.
that is how I balance it,
Okay.
and I find the right tone to talk to him. Yeah.
So, I know he's not here, but how do I pronounce it? Heap?
Hip.
Hip.
Yeah.
Hip, yeah.
His facial expressions are some of the best things I've looked at this year. He's so great. Can you talk to me? Because I had a question for him. I didn't realize he wasn't going to be here today. What were some of the things that you said to him to get him into character? Because he portrays so much on his face without without saying
It's just
anything.
the same thing he says to all of us when he's not getting what he wants. No paycheck this week. No paycheck this week. That always get good results.
That's it. No, I'm joking. I'll get to that, but I want to start with because it starts here in this foundational place.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys will remember this, but very early on I was saying, look, I imagine these four characters on a scale, on a spectrum, with Hip being on one side, or the extreme of one side, and the insurmountable amount of losses that he's had, and loss in faith, belief. He becomes an island to himself. And so when I was talking to him, I was describing, look, I imagine that you have built inches of callus and wall around you, you are a rock, but your core is so soft still, because remember your fever dreams, you are so sentimental and poetic, and you have a symphony of so many things that you might not realize, and people won't realize because you don't speak. So on the outside you are stoic, but remember that how soft your core is, and that will break through sometimes within your expressions and the way you look. And again, it goes back to the idea of perceiving is more heightened than his being able to express with words. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Aden, Dali's character. So they, to me, mirror each other in ways, but actually they're, there's these similarities that maybe neither of them would acknowledge. But for Aden, he's lost so much belief in his own life. I talked with Dali a lot about this. He talked about this with his own childhood and upbringing. When you see something that shadows your perception of justice, of law, of how things are supposed to protect you, what happens to you? You retreat, and then you start to weaponize the attributes that you do have. So it's on one hand, they both go through the same kind of mental process, but they protect themselves in different ways. And Day is right in the middle. Mm-hmm. He is the most dual of the both. He can converse with everybody. His emotions to me are he's someone with such a kind heart that like Dustin was eloquently articulating, there's so much sorrow and melancholy to him, but I feel the naivety of his heart will always keep him looking for that love that he's looking for, or searching for that thing and so he will be relentless in that. And Fee's on his way to being like Aden, he's trying to assimilate so much. Aden's character to me, he's the only one who you don't understand his where he's come from, and that's intentional, because he's tried to suffocate that so much that he can't even remember himself. And Eddie's just on that path towards that.
Talk to me about playing kind of Sing mentioned, the foil to Long. Talk to me about he said that you guys have very similarities, but also those differences. So talk to me about how you establish that, and how the process of finding your character.
Well, for me, when you have to play a character, you become his lawyer.
Yeah.
So you have to, you have to be a lawyer with him. So for me, this guy made, as all we do, choices in life. Maybe should I wear these shoes or not? But with his life, he had to do choices more strong. I mean, if you take that way, it's going to be a long journey, or this one, it's going to be dangerous, but it's going to be shorter. So in the end, as Dustin said, it was a lot of conversation with Sing, all the cast about us and about the character. And for me, because it's not my main language, I had to a lot of work first on the text to really understand what's going on, and it's strong enough to understand from the first readings. But as soon as I was working on my English for the characters, I was going deeper and deeper in why these words, why this one. And with Singh, who's also a writer of the scripts, you have the opportunity to ask questions straight to Singh. Okay, next week I'm going to ask this question, and we can go deeper and deeper about this scene, or just something about what can I bring to the character. So yeah, I don't know what else I can say. Maybe we can go minutes after minutes for the movie. I can be his lawyer every time. Yeah, that's it. If you got an hour and a half, that's it.
For my final question, I kind of want to go back to the beginning where you guys talked about those Skype sessions. I'm so taken aback by that, because that isn't something that often happens in terms of prep. How vital did you guys feel those sessions were to bond, to learn?
Completely vital. You know, I'm not a theater guy. I've never done theater, and I never will, because
It's not your thing.
You should.
It's not my thing. No.
Exactly.
I'm not putting it down. I think it's just I have a lot of friends who do theater.
Yeah.
To me, it's scary to get in front of people. You know?
You're doing a great job. I know I'm a stranger. You're doing great.
But in theater, you know, that's normal for people to have weeks and weeks and weeks of rehearsals. And in film, you know, I've been doing this for 34 years. With the exception of one other film, I've never had that much rehearsal time or exploratory work. And I think just the way the economics of the business, filmmaking, it's hard to get that. So in this one, it was crucial because, again, all of our characters are so different, and we weren't even in the same place. I mean, we didn't even start to be in the same place until like a few weeks before shoot, right?
I think it was 2 days before we shot was the first time we all...
because again, the logistics of it. So without all of the time that we all were talking about and getting to know each other, and sharing things, and those things would spark certain ideas for Singh. You know, things we talked about. Like him and I talked a lot about the symbolism of water and. But without that time, the kind of work I know that we ended up doing in the film would have happened the way it turned out, because you can't manufacture those kind of things. At least I can't as an actor. I need to feel a certain inner life, and I think inner life can only be created when you sort of go step by step. You can't rush it.
Right.
Because there've been times when we would talk about certain things, and then a week later we'll get together again, and then we'll have a slightly different take on it. You know, something we like, oh man, we still really love that concept or that idea a lot. Or sometimes we're like, well, you know, that was great to explore it, but it didn't quite, we don't know where to put it in the film, that sort of thing, you know. And that takes time. It just takes physical time. You can't, there's no shortcut for that kind of stuff. You know, on a film like this, I don't know about you guys, but I couldn't have done. I mean, it would have been a different product, but so I thought it was one of the best things that we were able to do.
Do you guys want to add anything to that?
No, I totally agree.
No, I agree. For me, it helped. For me, when you work with an actor, you don't even know. You haven't got to know them at all. Maybe like 10, 20 minutes before the first scene or whatever it may be. It can be kind of strenuous because you're like, I don't freaking know you, man. Like, I don't. But when we got to know each other, I was like, oh my gosh, this is Singh understands this story, and this is his baby, and he raised it well. That's what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm trying to get the point. This Zoom session, those Zoom sessions helped me, and I'm sure everyone else, to gather, like hearing them, and oh my gosh, like I branched new ideas with Singh, and I had new thoughts about. I still know about you, but
You're never gonna know me. I'm not gonna let you in, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Trader, you went with him.
But yeah, it helped me explore them as people and got more comfortable. Because when you're comfortable with actors, you're like, I've heard you before, and blah, blah. You're gonna synergize a lot better. So yeah, kudos to that for sure. And yeah, and second him, that don't happen, man. It don't happen. It should happen more.
It should, and especially on an indie movie, I feel like oftentimes you're just thrown into the mix, and this is such a rare thing.
Right. I just want to add a little bit to all of that because Dustin mentioned something that I don't want it to get glossed over. It's the same thing that I did with each one of them. So I would do an individual session with them each week, and then we would start doing group sessions as well together.
It sounds like therapy.
Yeah, it is, and it was like Fee was saying, they built this chemistry together that you can't replicate if you just throw yourself into a room, like Dustin was saying. But I also wanted to keep them completely separate from Hip, which we did. They never met until production, and then even then I was like, please don't talk to them. But then they're both from Paris, so he was so excited, and Dolly was like, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to speak to you. And Hip didn't know why. But what I wanted to come back to was the first part of this. You know, it was almost a year that we were doing this before we even got into pre-production, and I'm so thankful that they were so passionate about that, because it's their time too, you know. So much so in its headspace. But we first started not really talking about we talk about the characters, but it wasn't about that. It was about their own personal stories, and that's why it's like therapy too. But it's like we share each other's histories. Now we know where each other's comes from. It nurtures that into the characters. But then also we all have a shorthand. It's like, can you draw from that beautiful story you told me? Like, can you do that? Can you do that? And that helped us move through so many scenes in so many beautiful ways.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Like I don't have the luxury of having a session with the writer. We will just jump on set straight away. But then I connect with Hip was so well, because like straight away, like we chat in the mother tongue.
Yes.
And then
Wait, we did have a session because we talked about how we were from Hong Kong.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Yes,
But
Gabby.
it's a bit true. But then with the film itself, right?
Yes.
The background, the film, the character, right? Yeah. And also, and then we start talking about our acting, and we are very similar. Like he started from IT. He worked in IT. He worked for IBM, and I say, oh really? I'm also an IT consultant. And then all of a sudden we just end up in acting industry, and then we talk about, both of us got one through war, we have trauma from the war, we share a lot of things. And then we come to say, what are you doing now? So he's doing some theater play, and I said, me too! Both of us are actually a theater performer. And that's why we connect so well. We were just like, we can sit there and chat for the whole day.
No, you know what's so special about that moment? I don't want to say which moment because I don't know if people are going to see it or not. When they really, what you'll know, when they finally connect with each other, when she's there physically next to him, that was like a spellbinding moment on set. Like, you could feel them both. I didn't see Gabby and I didn't see Hip. It was those characters, and I think both of you were quite moved in some way, and it was quite transcendent. Don't know where that came from, but it's one of those moments that like you bottle it. You won't be able to reenact it again.
So it sounds like your casting director is a genius.
Christian Bustamante is an incredible person.
It sounds like
He's the guy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He's amazing.
Thank you guys so much for chatting with me, and I really, really, really appreciate it.